Have you noticed how video game characters are becoming more and more dull, boring, and generic each time? Almost like my own personality in this YouTube channel. Do you remember Sonic the Hedgehog, Master Chief, Lara Croft? Now, do you remember any generic character number 1 from Horizon Zero Dawn, Dragon Age Veilguard, or Starfield, or even Concord? No? Well, it is very known in research that many people like to play video games because we identify with the characters. And this is a way of expressing ourselves or experiencing that media on a deeper level. That's why many protagonists in Japanese games, for example, tend to be silent or not talk at all, or even some other games are in first person. It's all because of immersion. And of course, this isn't only specific to video games. It happens on movies, on TV shows, on comic books, on even politicians. But recently, this is something that is apparently being lost with modern games. And look, I have no problems with capitalism most of the time, but I have to agree with Karl Marx sometimes and say that capitalism is ruining gaming. Studios are more and more prone to make products start seem so generic and unpolished, products that no one can recognize themselves with, and therefore are struggling with low sales, low stock value, massive layoffs, studios being shut down, and none of this seems to be getting better with the addition of AI or even the so-called woke content and gaming production. Here's an example. So some months ago, this trailer for this new Xbox game came out, this South of Midnight. And a person on this site I use wrote the following. There are many comments here accusing the game of being woke. I don't even need to suggest what element presented in the trailer makes some here think that. And what this person was alluding for was the race of the main character, which is black, and therefore, if you don't like this game or thought that it would be bad, you are automatically considered a racist, which is insane. And then I wrote the following: uninteresting characters, simple as that. There's a reason why people remember Link, Master Chief, Geralt, Dante, Arthur Morgan, Solid Snake, Kratos, and even the guy from Dune, and it's not because they are white. Anyone who thinks that a character's skin color makes them good is delusional. I would even add here a racist. Characters are written to be interesting and engaging with the player. If the protagonists didn't achieve this because of the developers thinking about pleasing an audience that famously doesn't play video games, and the audience doesn't want to buy it because they don't identify with the character, it's not prejudice, it's not racism, it's a lack of desire for the game. It's the same as expecting 90% of 007's or James Bond's audience to be women or Barbie's audience to be men. People can and will consume anything, but there's always a predominant audience, and in the end, that's what the market is about: the audience, the consumers. And what I mean by this is very simple. Since we are children, boys and girls play with different toys. Men normally and typically play with cars and objects, and girls like to play with dolls. Now, there's nothing wrong with boys playing with dolls or girls playing with cars. That happens a lot. The problem is trying to force one to play with the other. Of course, forcing men only to play with cars, for example, would be bad. But forcing boys and saying that they cannot play with like cars because that would make them part of the patriarchy, and that would make them part of that 1% of very, very rich and very successful men that own most of the things that you give money for, and therefore that would be bad. And because of that, you have to play with Barbies now. Imagining that all of this is just due to social construct is insane. Because even chimpanzees show preferences in their toys they play. For example, when presented with stereotypical human toys, female chimpanzees prefer to play with typically feminine toys, such as dolls, while males prefer typically masculine toys, such as toy cars. And by the end of the experiment, the females appeared highly attached to the toys and treated them in a maternal manner, as if they were real babies. In another experiment, it was found that males had a greater preferences for objects that could be manipulated compared to females, preferring toys that looked more like tools, using more like of their motor skills rather than a maternal care, like engineering skills, for example. So you might be skeptical and say, oh, obviously the male monkeys were outcompeting the females to get the toys, right? Because they are male and they tend to do that. But another study from 2008 found that, in fact, no. This was not dependent on peer socialization, leading to the hypothesis that perhaps this could reflect the behavioral and cognitive influences caused by the monkey's hormones, which I think it is a simplification, but it is still a very good explanation. Some female hormones make women and other female animals more into care, just as testosterone can sometimes make some men and male animals more aggressive. I want to get to some other types of data showing how men and women play video games in the same proportion, that is 50-50 of the players are male and female. The problem with these articles that I believe are being shown to the CEOs, the boards, and investors of these gaming studios by companies like Sweet Baby Inc., the problem with them is that they do not show the whole data, which is men and women play different types of games. In this graphic here on, yes, Wikipedia, you can see what is also common sense. Women like to play more with games that involve family or farming simulators like Stardew Valley, Animal Crossing, Don't Starve Together, or The Sims. Just look at YouTube and you will see the majority of these videos and YouTubers that do content for these sorts of games are actually female. I don't think I've seen many men playing The Sims and making series of it, but at least I don't know. But then when you get to games like sports, tactical shooters, racing, all the way to even open world games, you will have the majority of the players being men. And if you look at how 70% or 70 to 80% of the players for Candy Crush, for example, are apparently women, and you will realize how many of them play games like this, and these games are being considered in those sorts of data for the sake of numbers, probably. And when you consider that most of the AAA games tend to have these genres that are predominantly male, and you try to convince the investors and the CEOs and the boards to no, we have to change that. We have to burn the video game industry to the ground just because we don't like them playing the bad things that we want them to play, or even with the characters that they don't recognize themselves with at all, then they are to blame. And when we go back to South of Midnight, what is the premise of this game? Well, you are a woman that just lost her mother and seeks some other woman to help her to get in contact with her. Look, if you are a man and you're trying to play AAA games, and yes, who knows, maybe you're a white guy, this is probably one of the most boring plots you can give. Even I think this is boring. I don't care about this at all. Even if the gameplay is good, I will not play the game, not because of the skin color of the character, fuck that. I wouldn't play because the story, and if you focus this game on story, and it is focused on that, that will just be so boring to play. And apparently, many people didn't play the game as well. Personally, I would much rather play something that I can see myself as, which is normally a male character doing masculine things, not black, not feminine, not Spider-Man 2 or Kratos Ragnarok apologizing for being male and white. Fuck that Spider-Man 2, fuck that Kratos 2. I just want to express the feelings that my ancestors apparently had and will have passed down to me for after millions and millions of years of evolution. Yeah, you may say that looking for this in video games is kinda lame, but you see, we also have to learn these things from somewhere, and culture is the way we do that, not only for with our peers, but also from books, also from culture in general, with movies and video games and so on. You should not try to repress or change things just because you don't like them in the way they are. Accepting them as they are is the first step to really change and do something. And I don't think anyone will gain anything from denying our instinctual patterns and trying to force social change to something that is in here after millions and millions of years. For women, well, they like more social and games that deal with caring. And men like games that are about competing, exploring, and sometimes also to express our aggressiveness. But things aren't all black and white. So yeah, even though things can mix with each other and there is no problem with that, there's still a base of motivation and human instincts in that you just cannot deny, and people will follow that. And if you ignore that, you jerkman, then people will not like being killed with a golf club and hated on your game and your TV show, because that will be, in a sense, like killing them and their ideals in real life or something like that. I would need another video to cover that, but what I'm saying here for now is this. We don't like games because of the skin color of the characters or even their appearances. It's more like something more psychological, something more essential, like you don't model after people just because of their looks. There are people who do that, certainly, but that isn't the only thing that matters or that should matter. We also like values. We also like heroism. We also like masculine and, yes, feminine traits. And characters that portray those things and this essence that is within all of us. And trying to deny this is just like trying to deny your consumers and what they enjoy. And that's it. This is the video. See you next time. Goodbye.